It's the first working day of the year and already two major labor unions in the education sector are declaring strikes over their conditions of service. The teachers and the Educational Workers Union are embarking on an indefinite strike action over government's failure to pay them an agreed professional development allowance. But according to the national president of TEWU, Unrest, their members in senior high schools and GES offices nationwide will continue to stay away from work as the alleged discrimination in the payment of the allowances.
This allowance was approved for both teaching and non-teaching staff according to the Minister of Education, and the payment was to take effect from 2020. The teachers one had been paid. Then we went and alerted GES management that this allowance paid to teachers, even though it was announced for both teaching and non-teaching, our side have not been paid. So then we continued to the minister, the new Minister of Education, and we have been waiting for them ever since. The only thing we realized is that they pay another tranche to the teachers again in the year 2021. And honestly speaking, the patience of members of TEWU has actually run out. That is why this time around, NEC has to take a decision for us to take an industrial action if it has not been paid up to the 1st December 2021. That is our main purpose of the action. Professional development allowance is supposed to be used in developing whatever profession you have. You use this token allowance to be developing so that you can improve on the performance of your job. We know very well that government is eager for students to go back to school, so government will not delay in addressing our concerns. So as soon as government address our concern, we have not given any timeline, but we are awaiting government to address our concerns.
But this also means that as long as government has not addressed your concerns, then you are not returning to work.
Well, that's when the NEC will decide.
The University Teachers Association of Ghana, UTAG, will also embark on a strike action from the 10th of January following the inability of government and the unions to agree on their demand to pay entry-level lecturers $2,084. According to President of the University of Ghana branch, Dr. Samuel Nkumban, government has failed to resolve its concerns despite several meetings last year.
It's a strike that is pending. UTAG was going to go as a first step ahead of the national declaration. You will note that it was in November of last year that the National Executive Committee of UTAG issued a communique in relation to some conditions of service that government had failed to meet, and some timelines were given that by close of December, if those were not addressed, then of course we were going to be going on strike in January. And so UTAG UG rescinded a decision to go on the 3rd in sync with what the National Secretariat had decided, that as from the 10th of this month, we all are going to go on strike nationwide. And so UG is kind of suspended, so to speak, in sync with the fact that all of us have agreed that from the 10th of January, if we do not hear positively from government, then there's a nationwide declaration.
Right. We know that you had a series of meetings when you suspended your strike, and then later on when you wanted to declare another with the Education Ministry. Has there not been any progress at all in terms of those meetings?
Well, unfortunately, no, because the reasons for which we suspended the strike hinged on the promises of having to get a labor market survey completed by 31st October. And the agreement was that if they got the labor market survey done and the report submitted by 31st October, then of course by close of December, we should have known our way clear in terms of what is contained and what government timelines were as regards implementation. As we speak, we have not been able to secure a copy of the report, despite our understanding that the report has been submitted.
The Education Ministry says they're working to avert the impact of the strike on the education sector. A spokesperson for the ministry, Kwesi Kwarten says the government is still on the negotiating table with the unions to resolve their concerns.
I was in the negotiation table when we agreed with the leadership of UTAG. I mean, you recall, if you look at their research component of the book and research allowance, initially it was an A amount. As I speak with you, it's over 300% increase. I'm not saying that that is satisfactory, but our conversation, even beyond what we agreed, was premised on the fact that government, through the statistical service, was conducting the market premium survey. And after that, the rest of the conversation will go on. That was the entire position of the leadership of UTAG, of course, the national UTAG. Then again, we see I think a chapter of the UTAG who, I mean, for the purpose of this conversation, I'll fail to mention. And then at the end of the day, we are seeing another chapter, just probably a single. Of course, their concerns could be legitimate, but I mean, that's why we are there. We will listen to them and we'll address it. Recently, CETA2 also came out with their concerns. Of course, I mean, they spoke about the disparity because now that they have also been promoted to the tertiary status, they also spoke about the disparity between their conditions of service and their friends who are lecturers. And of course, I mean, the Honorable Minister for Education said, yes, your concerns will be well addressed. We are currently sitting at the negotiation table and also talking.
Let's go to the phone lines now and speak to the Executive Secretary of the National Labour Commission, Ofosua Samoa. Thank you very much, sir, for your time here on Joy News Prime. TEWU is embarking on a strike over unpaid professional development allowance. Has this come to your attention?
Yes, it has. They gave us the notice of their intended strike and their reason for doing so. So we think that the letter will be immediately route to their employers, that is the ministry and the agencies concerned, in the demands that they have stated, to urge them to resolve it and to apprise the Commission on what they are doing to resolve it, to avert the possibility of the declaration of the industrial strike, which they intend to embark on tomorrow. So I was told by the Minister of Employment, that the Deputy, that the ministry and the government side were engaging them on it. So we proceeded on the holidays, and we are back today, and we are hearing that we are going on the strike tomorrow. So that is an indication that the problem remains unresolved. In the circumstances, the chairman of the commission has directed that the government side, the ministry, agencies, and the union be invited to the commission so that we attempt a resolution.
But to a bit more specifics, they claim that teachers have not been paid, have been paid the same allowance, but they haven't, and that for them is discrimination. How is that, if this has come to the NLC already?
That is why we are calling them to come, so that if it is true that they have not been paid, or if there is any form of discrimination, then the commission will direct for the rectification. So until they come before us, we only have the notice of the allegation which we referred to the ministry and government. So whether it has been resolved or not, whether the resolution was right and satisfactory or not, will be determined by the commission when they appear.
Let's talk about UTAG now. They are also embarking on a strike from the 10th of January. This was a major issue in 2021. Why has this still not been resolved?
You see, that of UTAG is a bit, because the leadership of UTAG, the national executive, went into some form of agreement with the government, and they seem to be on the road. However, UTAG University Ghana said they were not in agreement for the national executive, who have the mandate to negotiate on their behalf, have agreed on, and that they were dissociating themselves. That makes it a bit complex, because UTAG Ghana is made up about 16 public universities. So I am thinking that if they will have to agree to that of UTAG Legon, then the next time is UD, the next time is UCC, UPSA, UST, so on. It's a bit complex. However, it has I cannot say that because we suspect or we are forced to say this is wrong, it will not be attended to. The committee are taking duty, and we are taking steps to have the matter resolved.
Hopeful this will be addressed before the 10th of January?
Oh, certainly, it should be. It should be.
Thank you very much.
I don't think it's a difficult thing for the company to do, except that you also urge the UTAG University of Ghana and any other body of the youth, that's the body, which intends to make such declaration. In fact, if there's a disagreement between you and your national executive or any other body doing anything on your behalf, you are unable to resolve it now. You refer it to the commission. But this declaration of strike here and there, within the first week of January, just after the break, TEWU, UTAG, Unrest, TEWU, eventually, I think the whole of the educational sector is, going down. And I don't think it is good for the country. At the end of the day, who are there? Who are in the university? Who are in the secondary schools? Who are in the training colleges? They are all children. And later, if the matter is resolved, the strikes are called off, and now you have to do extra time. Yes, you can do the extra time by teaching for 4 hours. But would the children also have the ability to absorb what they could have done in the, 45 minutes? Now we pass it on them and so on. So they'll tell you that, yes, we will make some time, do extra hours. Extra hours you can do. But what about the absorption? And at the end of the day, what type of gadgets will be produced onto the market? And what will be their contribution to the economy? If they are really equipped with knowledge and experience.
Very well.
So you look at the multiplier effect, and I'll beg of them that yes, whether you are on strike or not, at the end of the day, we all go to the table and settle.
Mr. Samoa, I'm grateful that you could join us. You're obviously worried about this, so we'll be following this closely to see what becomes of the issues that are on the table.